Hey everyone, welcome to this webinar put on by VRM Intel. I appreciate you joining us today. I'm going to tell you really quickly, I know first of all, some of you are not quite used to GoToMeeting. It's been a while since we've used GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar. I was just telling Jodi and Mike that I had just had an automatic renewal for my enterprise level GoTo account before we got started, before COVID happened last year. So I ended up sticking with it. So for all of you, iPhone, Zoom, anyway, thank you for making it through the webinar to get here and log on. I'm going to tell you why we're doing this. So we lost Jason. So we'll come back. But there's been a lot of news that's hit since the Airbnb's IPO. It's been very difficult to manage for me personally at VRM Intel. So what we've seen is an enormous amount of an influx of capital into the industry from both venture capital and from private equity. We also saw something announced that's called a SPAC, which we'll talk more about that the HomeAway founders, Carl Shepard and Brian Sharples, recently kicked off with an S1. And then, of course, the news of the day, which is Vacasa purchasing Turnkey, which is a huge acquisition in our industry, but they've also purchased a couple of other companies that have kind of gone under the radar. I find interesting and want to ask about, including Vantage Vacation Rentals in Ocean City, Maryland, and Latitude 38 and Telluride. Both of these companies are fairly established in our industry, and I think that market share shift in those areas is something that's worth noting. In addition to that, we've been hearing rumors that a company called Trigger Capital, which purchased Village, Realty, Sun Palace, Great Ocean, Great Western, or Retreatia, however you want to call them, is also being purchased by another company, private equity called Light Bay Capital. So let's just say there's a lot of new terminology in our industry that I'm not used to. I don't know where this is headed. The calls that I get all the time are things like, is it the right time to sell? Should I be saving? Like, is this industry moving past where I can be in it? So I wanted to bring together some of the most recognizable faces in the vacation rental industry that we all know and trust, and who really understand the dynamics of the independent property management company. So I'm going to introduce you guys. I think everyone knows you. Mike Harrington, former board member, former board president in Verma, also built a new company called Carolina Retreats that's now incorporated both inns and local inns and vacation rentals in multiple markets. Jodi Refosco, who co-founded tailor-made Deep Creek Vacation Rentals with her husband and her brother, and they are by far the largest property management company in Deep Creek. And when you think about Deep Creek, you also think about tailor-made. So one of the reasons I wanted to pull Jodi in is to really talk about this community destination piece of what's going on. We also have Steve Milo, who is the founder and VTrips. We brought here, we're going to have to really struggle to get Steve to open up and discuss things, in a candid way. So you guys can help me with that. Ben Edwards, president of Weatherby Consulting and founder there, but also Ben has actually been investing in vacation rentals too. He's become quite the property manager again, going back to his roots. So we've got Sanctuary Vacation Rentals and Cinnamon Shore Rentals, and maybe something else on the horizon, which I hate to say. So then we've got Jason Sprenkle, who is the former CEO and founder, or former president, excuse me. I know we have Ashley, so I don't want to make her mad. The former founder of 360 Blue in the Destin area, who very recently sold to Natural Retreats, one of these funded players that we're going to be talking about. So since then, during that time, Jason's also has started Q Data Dashboard and has been building that out for the industry as well. So welcome, you guys. Thank you for being here. I'm going to start with, let's start with the Vacasa purchase of Turnkey. I'm just going to jump in here. One of the concerns, Jodi, that I have about a lot of these funded acquisitions, and what I mean by funded are the companies that are growing based on money they're getting venture capital or private equity. In the community, especially in Deep Creek, you are you're such a part of the community there. You sponsor the Little League teams, you sponsor all of the off-season events, you clean, you do trash cleanup on the roadways. Like when a funded company purchases an in-market company and the founders leave, it seems that we lose something in the destination. First, we lose community involvement, and second, we lose destination marketing. So I'm just going to ask you this, like, when you look at a Vacasa purchase of turnkey, where these are two companies that were already not investing in the community, what do you think that means for some of these destinations where they're such a big player?
I think you're going to lose it's going to dilute some of that community involvement. Like I could tell you already, like in my community, we have Vacasa here, and they don't do anything with the community. They're also not involved with any of the text conversations that we have with the county commissioners. They're not involved when we were closed down for COVID. There's just no involvement. So when I hear about this, I grew up in this industry, and it is like a mom and pop, and it is boots on the ground and people being involved. So when it gets bigger, like what you're saying, I do get concerned and wondering if what makes us special, what makes our industry special and different than say like a hotel. Maybe that's going to get lost as you keep doing that down the road. All I can tell you is what I've seen here locally. I mean, I've had to make phone calls to get involvement, but they don't do the destination marketing. They don't care about the individual owner, because that's also part of your market too. So they're just about numbers right now. And, as a local property manager who's involved with talking to all my owners, that's a big deal. And that's part of the reason why they buy in our area, because they have conversations with us. So I think that's going to change too, as you have these bigger companies buying in. Oh,
I lost it.
there you are.
I do. Lino, are you there?
I am. Amy, can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I can totally hear you. Just can't see you. I also want to introduce Leno Maldonado. He formerly VP of Wyndham Vacation Rentals, right when they sold to Vacasa. So since then, he has moved on. He is now the president of Be Home 24/7, and he is also an equity investor in property management companies right now, and doing some really cool stuff in the Gulf Coast market. So, thank you for joining us. You and I have talked a lot about the local effort, about what happens in the community. And you say all the time that our industry is built on relationships. What do you think the impact is of more and more companies coming in that are not contributing to the community?
Yeah, Amy, I think they're critical, being involved in the communities. I think it's certainly something that helps build culture as well. And for me, it's very simple. Culture is what builds relationships with owners and with guests, and those guests returning because of your great culture and local experiences are what create stability long term. So it's really not it's not a very difficult formula, but it is one that you've got to actively engage in and support. And so it's tough to see a company you spent a lot of time and effort building a true hospitality company that loses its way because the folks now in charge locally either just aren't supported in that same way, or those relationships with the local communities are just ignored altogether.
And one thing that I find interesting with that too is the management. I mean, Eric Breon wasn't always the most popular person. The former CEO of Vacasa wasn't always the most popular person in the industry, although I think most of us came to really like and respect him. But he did clean toilets at one time. Company, you know what I mean? He did do the business. The people running that company now, with the exception of Bob Milne, are not really, at the top, or don't have a lot of experience in the industry. Does that matter, Lena?
I think it matters a great deal for long-term stability of the business. I mean, the best way to look at your business model as a sustainable one is to really look at the underlying KPIs. And so when you go out and you make all these purchases, how many of those units do you have left at the end of the year or the beginning of the next year? And if the answer is less than what you bought and it's significant, then you've really got to reflect internally about the business model itself. And is what you're providing what the individual owners and associations have signed up for? And if not, why not? And then what are you going to do about it? Bolting on new pieces of business development, whether through acquisition or organic, it's fairly fundamental and easy to do. Retaining the business is what is really controlled by the local efforts. And it's always puzzling to me when these companies buy great local operations and then do everything that they can to have them operate differently than what created their success to begin with. And so, I think we're going to see a lot more consolidation in the market, but I think it's a net positive for local operators until a big company understands that this is a local business. I think the opportunities are going to be tremendous at the local level for expansion.
Yeah, I think that when I put together that article that I launched this morning about what investors don't know about the short-term rental industry, those are pretty much my notes for this presentation. What I was going to ask these guys is what all the questions that are asking there. So if you guys want to reference that, you're welcome to. But Mike, this whole idea of localized operations and the operational intensity of the business and how many local resources you have to draw in. You've been in multiple markets. Well, how important is that?
I mean, it's super important. So we did a survey one time, it's been a number of years ago. We asked a question, what's more important? Very simple, income or cleaning? And it was effectively 1A and 1B, right? It was income and cleaning were pretty much the same. So a lot of our homeowners, in our areas, we're a traditional market, we're beach drive-to destination. I mean, frankly, it's property care trumps income in the greater scheme of things. And, we always have to have that in the back of our mind. I mean, I can talk about yield management and pricing tools and software till I'm blue in the face, and at some point I just lose you. I mean, I just lose you as a client because that's really not what's the most important thing for you. So, if that's the sales pitch for a lot of companies that are scaling and they're trying to do this and it's strictly income production, well, they're going to be at a disadvantage out of the gate. You're always going to get those people. You're going to get those homeowners that are, they're in it for that. They're cost conscious. They want white glove service for bottom barrel pricing. And at the end of the day, for us, it's a relationship business, just like local real estate agencies. You're not a former, past, current client, you're just a client, period. And that's the way we try to treat our homeowners as much as possible.
Yeah, Ben, looking at the quality difference, on the ground of these companies versus you've got them in Texas mainly. What are you seeing from your homeowners as far as their motivation?
Well, look, let me speak broadly, and then I'll get a little bit more granular. But our involvement in companies over my 21 years in the business has been fairly extensive. I mean, I've probably seen, 400 to 600, 600 to 800 P&Ls of businesses. We've taken deep dives in a lot of businesses, and the best businesses in the industry are focused on things like Lino mentioned. That's hospitality. Things like Mike mentioned, 1A and 1B. Revenue and property care. I just don't know how you do that in today's environment. I get that, AI is the rage and having, technology, enhanced technology help create efficiency in your business. But at the end of the day, it's a relationship business. And we have homes in California, homes in Texas, because we know the homeowners, we know what it is they want, we know how they want their pillows when they check in, and that's that's why we have those properties. Now, on the flip side of that, there's people that frankly don't care about that. I mean, there's people that really appreciate that technology story. They want revenue. maybe they're not as focused on the property aspect of it. Maybe it's more investment. And look, I guess what I'm saying is there's everyone can have whatever it is they want. I don't fault these guys for taking that approach, but it is, from an outsider's perspective, particularly when they buy Wyndham locally in my market, and knowing that, my former mentor, Ed Seymour, who Lino knows really well, foster a lot of these people up through the ranks, and watching these guys get laid off, it's tough. And knowing that, the best businesses I've seen in the industry are those that are, really heavily grounded, in the community, but in they're partners with the homeowners, really. I mean, that's what I've seen really propel companies. I'd venture to say that Jason would tell you his success is because he's got, literally a Nissan dealership, or had a Nissan dealership up there because he had so many vans on the road. I mean, he had so many people on the road that are really focused on taking care of properties and taking care of people. So I'm curious to see how this works out for them. I wish them the best, but all I can tell you is, the best businesses I've seen have been focused on quality and relationship, and trying to do things more in a traditional way.
It brings up something I was talking to Jason about a little bit earlier today. And Steve, I'm totally coming to you on this profitability thing. And also, it's going to totally open up this conversation. Talk to each other too. This is super casual. I'm just trying and doing this. It's just to understand more about what's going on so that I can better cover the industry. So instead of doing all these interviews on the phone, I just decided to do them live because I know other people have questions too. So Jason, I want to talk about an example, right? Kaiser, that I used to work for, Kaiser Realty in Gulf Shores, Alabama. They sold to Wyndham, and then Wyndham sold to Vacasa. Bloodbath. Everyone's gone, right? Like everyone. I mean, I think there are 3 people out of 100 employees that were there when I was there that still have a job with Vacasa. So the community, it's bad. On top of that, the homeowners, I mean, these were huge, really luxury, home rents in the area, not being taken care of. So Leonard Kaiser and Glenn Kaiser to reopen. They're out of their non-competes. They decided to jump back in and we saw this back in the day with Resort Quest. Doug Friendly did it. Pedro Mandoki did it. I mean, this isn't new. Jason, well, first of all, you just sold your company. What's to keep you from coming back in when your non-compete's up and starting to 60 Blue all over again?
Yeah, just the energy, you build a company over many, many years. Look how long it took Bob Oakes to build the beautiful company he built, right? It takes time, right? And the question is, are you worn out at the end of that if you found something better to do, or do you want to jump back in and leverage what you've got? And I think it depends on who you sold the company to and how you feel, right? I mean, Glenn's the perfect example for me of somebody who put their heart and soul and life and name on the line, sold it to somebody, saw it fall apart. And it's got to be, it's got to be hurtful to see what happens to your company after the fact. And I think that creates a deep desire to get back in and put it together and compete and do it right again, right? But I mean, I view it, kind of in the framework of what you and Ben were talking about. Is there's a couple of different models, and some of them seem to clearly not work, and some of them seem to work, right? I think of Glenn Kaiser's as the example of ones that just don't work. You come into literally a company that owns the community, like Jodi's, and has their literal name on the sign, and you strip out the guy whose name's on the sign, and then you hope that the owners aren't going to live after all of this relationship has been built. That model just doesn't work, right? And I think the Vacasas of the world are going to win. They're going to get the IPO, or they're going to win for that first level, right? I think they'll get to the IPO, and that'll count as a win. Question is, will the shareholders win? Will they ever drive value? I think Steve will have a lot to say about that.
I can't remember which one of you I was talking to about this, but we'll get to that. But like the private equity companies, will they win? Probably. Will the company win? Will the homeowner win? Will the destination win?
It depends on the model, right? Like, look at the PE company that's supposedly coming in and buying what Chigaron and Bob put together with Village, right? And Great Western and all this. I mean, to me, those are solid companies with great EBITDAs, which I want to talk about more. I think that's the key to everything. And they're still branded the way they are. and they're not pulling all the people. They're not pulling the Glenn Kaisers out, as I understand it, right? Put a couple of those great companies together, I think you can still have a great company. Obviously close to the Natural Retreats 360 Blue model. Jeremy and I are gone, but their plan is to do no harm first, like doctors, right? Leave the relationships in place, leave the people in place, incentivize them to grow. I think those models can work. I think that's different from the Vacasa model. Then last but not least, like Turnkey had a little bit of a different model. Turnkey was growing organically, I think as well as anybody out there. And so they've got a path to continue to grow organically that doesn't depend heavily on relationships. It depends upon marketing and low cost. Like that's a different model that could survive some, different than the Glenn Kaiser Vacasa model.
So Steve, we have a question here. What's the difference between Turnkey and Vacasa? And how do those companies fit together?
Well, they were both unprofitable and have been unprofitable. I think the difference right now is that, Vacasa pretty much gutted their original owner-founder, and the owner-founders of Turnkey are still there. So there may be more of a culture at Turnkey than at Vacasa. But I do want to say back to your PE question, hey, look, the investors of Stay Alfred, Domio, and Lyric, they lost everything. So for people to say, well, the PEs are doing victory laps, look, PEs have made some very bad investments in this space, in this sector. And I would say, one of the things back to this localized issue, it's going to come back to bite the companies that aren't putting back into the industry. I mean, I know for a fact, because we've acquired a company recently and we're about to acquire a couple more, that the fact that Vacasa doesn't get back to the industry, and I'm talking on the advocacy level in Florida, that resonated with the seller, as did the fact that we were going to keep all the employees. And people in this industry and on this webinar that are deciding to potentially sell their company, these are decisions that are important to them. Like, are you going to keep their brand? Are you going to keep their employees? What is their legacy going to be like? You've worked your entire life to build this legacy, and now you're going to sell it. Are you going to sell it to a strip miner, someone that's going to torch and destroy what you built, or are you going to sell it to a company that is responsible and that's going to manage it? This is going to bite Vacasa if they don't start to act like a proper industry leader, which they're not right now, and start to put money back into the industry instead of taking it out. Any disagreements?
Mike, if you were to sell right now, would you, do you care what they do with your company?
Of course. So, I mean, like Jodi, I mean, I live here, I work here, we personally hired all these people. I mean, I got baseball practice at 5:30 and I'm the head coach, right? So, to me, it matters, right? It matters for not only longevity of the brand, for our employees, but I'm a business person too, and we want our appropriate return. How does that return look? I mean, there's a whole bunch of things involved in that, if and when we ever decide to do anything. But like Steve said, I mean, it's really tough, if your mindset is like ours and you sell it to someone who just wants to gobble you up in a large sort of nameless basis brand. And not to say that's a bad thing for everybody. Everybody has different motivations. Everybody has different things that grease their wheel. But I think some of the larger, bigger companies that are sustainable and profitable probably don't want to look at that as an alternative.
I'm going to put the Gulf Coast on this for Jason and Lino, like just because I know this market. In our markets down there, like the property management companies drive everything from a destination marketing level. Like if there's a red snapper tournament, that's being for with volunteers from these companies. If there's a beach renourishment project, those people are driving that. If there's a new, huge development being planned, they're considering what, the pros and cons of that for the, you take that out. I'm trying to understand the impact to the destination. Let's say all of the just Vacasa, natural retreats, iTrip, whatever models out there. it's not contributing to the community or to the destination marketing or to the city development and urban planning, what does that do? Where are we? If that's where we are in 10 years, what does that mean for the destination? Lino, I'll let you start on that.
Good, Lino.
I know you
Yeah, so we talked about the importance of local, and I think across the Panhandle, from really Gulf Shores, Alabama, all the way to Panama City, the short-term vacation rental market's like 70%, give or take, of the lodging market. So when you start looking at the impact of even that being local versus centralized somewhere else, and no revenue or support being put in the market, it's a big number. It's a big impact. And I think, in my last year or so, we had well over about 100 different things we supported and promoted across the region, from music festivals to arts festivals to, little league sports and cheerleading events. I mean, it was overwhelming. We had people in our marketing department, that's all that they did was manage sponsorships and that sort of thing. So yeah, that goes away, and that means a lot of money out of those local activities, even parades. That's good for culture too, for the employees to see what their brand is doing in the market and how meaningful and impactful it is to all of these different ventures. I think the most impactful to me, that has since gone, is that, we would bring about 50 inner city kids that had never been fishing for Take a Kid Fishing Week. And what did it cost us? It cost us 25 to 50 off-season condo units for a long weekend. That gets torched as one of these opportunities. Those are life-changing things for these kids in adoption agencies and the like. And so there's a impact bigger than just the market itself. I think of the good that this industry does at a local level that goes away, quite frankly, with large centralized brands.
I don't know that it goes away permanently. The Vacasas of the world are going to have to start reporting earnings per share at some point, and the owners still want quality. They want a relationship with Mike, a relationship with Jodi, right? There are markets out there where companies just have commodities. They've got 50 condos in Panama City, or one of the heavily condoed areas where all the units look alike, right? You can replace a tech stack in there and probably do that. Those aren't critical relationship driven, and no disrespect to those relationships that are there, but those are different than the people who have control over a community like Jodi and Mike and Ben have in their communities, right? Those relationships are going to come back, and they're going to stay with somebody who takes care of their home, right? The cleaning is just as important. And so even if Vacasa comes in and buys a bunch of those, at some point, particularly at the luxury market, they're going to have to figure out how to keep them and make money off of them. If not, those properties are going to migrate back to people who invest in Little League and take care of homeowners and do all that. And so I think it'll correct itself. That might be optimistic. And listen, all of them aren't taking that path. We wouldn't have sold our company to somebody that we didn't believe in, that wouldn't stay invested. I think Bob can say the same for Village, and I think time will tell, which model pans out.
Well, I think my point, going back to that,
there was a model that was already done 20 years ago. It was called Resort Quest, Jason. And how'd that model turn out? They started off with a group of founders. They were really early, and they fired all the founders, brought in a bunch of non-industry people, and then they had terrible technology that they were trying to build that they couldn't support. How'd that model turn out? Ben, you were there.
Yeah, listen, look, I think that's a timing issue as much as anything. I mean, technology at that point in time was just not conducive to that startup. But I mean, to your point, Steve, I guess everybody's kind of right in some form or fashion. That business was built to sell. And those guys, when they started buying earnings, everything kind of went down from there. That's fundamentally how it worked. But there will, and Lino can attest to this, there were some really smart, good industry people there. I think it really took a turn south when we got over into the Gaylord arena. But going back, look, we're talking about this localized investment and profitability. the point I was trying to make earlier, just I mean, to kind of talk through the profitability piece of this, is those companies that are focusing on quality, focusing on putting forth a great product, are also, from what I've found in looking at hundreds of companies throughout the U.S., are the ones that are also invested local. There is a direct correlation there, is the point I'm trying to make. And it's not, you know, it's okay if Vacasa doesn't want to invest in a little league team, but what I'm saying, and I think collectively what we're all kind of saying, is the folks that are involved in the community are also you know, really good business owners, property managers, etc. You know, one other thing that, you know, Amy, not to throw this out there, but I find it interesting to look at businesses that are owned by people, run by other people, and businesses that are owner managed. Fundamentally, I think owner managed businesses are better businesses. I think those folks work harder, take more risks. You know, they care about the dollars, but I mean, they're gonna spend, you know, thousands of dollars to make up for the reputation and things of that nature. And that's something I think is going to be missing, you know.
But it's also a twice removed thing too, right, Ben? So like Jason sells to Natural Retreats. Natural Retreats is in it to sell, right? But this company, like, they're trying to build a company to sell. It's a funded company. So Natural Retreats may do right by Jason, you know, or is that right? May do right by 360 Blue. But what happens when Natural Retreats gets purchased? And what happens when that private equity roll up happens and that company gets sucked up under that?
I mean, you got to leave the talent on the ground in each community, in my opinion, right? I mean, you got to have people who are running it, who are invested in it. I mean, Steve's not coaching Little League in every one of his markets, and he's dropping a hell of a lot of money to the bottom line and running as good a company as anybody. So I think you can scale, but I do think Ben makes a hell of a point. You got to have somebody who's running it, who's deeply invested in it. And the question is, when you roll up more and more of these companies, you're going to leave somebody in there who's invested in it, who's running it, who knows the ground game, right? Or are you going to put, you know, executives from other public companies in place?
I totally understand. I mean, and I think that the Little League coach thing is goes back to that kind of almost negative backhanded compliment, you know, that I don't mean that. Right now, the destination marketing is done by by local property managers. These companies are only riding the coattails of the work that these property managers are doing in their destinations. Like, all they're doing is listing their properties on Airbnb and Vrbo and calling it a day. And it's like, the people who are actually marketing the destination are the property management companies. When that's gone, when those people aren't there, I think that's my question that I can't get in my head, who fills that gap. But Steve, to your point, once you purchase a company or get into a new market, are you doing destination marketing or working with the CVB or DMO or anything like that?
Yeah, we're keeping the brands in place. We have sub brands in place. We just bought a company in Southwest Florida. We're rebranding to the entire company down there as a division of VTrips. But to your point, because we keep kind of kicking the can down the road, profitability ultimately becomes the most important metrics for the success and health of this business. You can only grow revenue so fast, so long, and not deliver profit before it catches up with you. And it already caught up with Oyo, Stay Alfred, Lyric, and Domio. And, you know, look, Vacasa needed to take an emergency cash bailout for Silver Lake just to stay in business. So, I mean, you know, we're talking about a company that hasn't made profit. And, you know, the lesson learned from investors, if they're on this call, is this is a business that profit makes a difference, right? And profit doesn't happen overnight. Profit is a culture, profit is management. And being able to have a healthy business is profitability. And, you know, these things really matter long term. Now, short term, maybe Oyo, not Oyo, Vacasa can merge into a SPAC and become liquid, and you know, people will be able to get out of that SPAC in enough time.
What is a SPAC? I mean, I'm not the only one who didn't know what this was. And by the way, this is a fairly new financial instrument. I mean, this is our model. This is something I was looking at a stat. This wasn't even really around that long ago, and now it's almost everywhere. Somebody tell me and everybody else, what is a SPAC? What does it do? And what does it mean for us?
A special purpose acquisition company. It's a vehicle where you could essentially pull together in a pre-IPO way companies or a company to go public in a certain amount of time. They're heavily regulated by the SEC, but there's been a run on them because there's been a pretty high increase in shareholder value, particularly in 2020. And to your point, I think in 2019, there were give or take 50 SPACs formed. In 2020, I think it was 200. And in 2021, I think the first quarter was 200. And, look, Brian Sharples and Carl Shepard formed a SPAC. Thayer Ventures has a SPAC. I mean, there were 7 SPACs formed last week, and they're all looking for targets to take public.
So Ben, on that, could we form a SPAC and include Carolina Retreats, VRM Intel, Taylor Made, VTrips, Cinema Shore, Key Data? Sounds like a pretty good SPAC.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I mean, yes, it's a vehicle, right? And I think that, I mean, I would tell you that they've been around longer, just haven't been used very widely. And I'll kind of mention a couple of things that I think are important. In a SPAC, you're investing into a company that has no operating business, right? So you give them all this money, and then they're going to go out and buy something, right? Now, the good thing about it is they don't go buy something, they're going to give you your money back, but you have no control over what they buy. So it's largely dependent on who you're giving your money to. Now, Carl and Brian, fantastic track record. That's not what I'm saying. I read a few weeks ago where Bill Gates has got a new SPAC that he's putting together. But for those of you that are out there thinking, okay, this is the new .com money making scheme, I think you really got to consider who you're giving your money to. I think these SPACs are. I think you need to be very careful because you're going to give somebody some money, and the reason you do these SPACs is because it's easier to navigate the IPO process, right? There's less regulation, less oversight. I mean, what could go wrong, right? If you merge with a SPAC and an IPO, there's a reason that these companies have to jump through all these fiery hoops to be listed online, because we know the profits are vetted and things of that nature in a more aggressive fashion, frankly. So. Look, this can be done. I think it's largely dependent on who's doing it and the information and oversight that you apply to it.
And I don't think you can't hear you.
Yeah, no, go ahead. I was thinking I just wanted to dive deeper into this profitability discussion and how we're talking about, what did we look at? $754 million between Turnkey and Vacasa to build them into what they are today. If you put that valuation on that company with less than 30,000 active units, active could be in a keyword, which I haven't done that lately, but that's way above the Resort Quest valuation if you looked at it on a per unit basis. Like, they have to turn around and get what out of it in order for everyone to, to make money. I don't understand how this works. I'll be honest, I don't understand where it starts.
Amy, you're either valued on revenue or you're valued on EBITDA or a combination thereof. So, in the case of Vacasa and Turnkey, they're going to try to attempt to get a valuation of revenue 3-4 times revenue. That's their end game. Companies that have EBITDA are going to try to get multiples probably in the mid to high teens, maybe even 20s. They're two different valuations. Profit and EBITDA it's a harder game to scale your EBITDA. I mean, you really have to have discipline, and that it's not just EBITDA, it's also CAGR. It's your compounded annual growth rate, as well as your revenue margins that investors are going to look at. But when you do have profitability and it's over a prolonged time, you build a track record. And I believe over time, investors are going to get smarter about this space, that profitability is the key metric. I'm not saying revenue is not important. Revenue growth is important. But being able to show that you have sustained profitability, that you have a culture of profitability from the top to the bottom, is what's going to allow you to continue to operate in a materially efficient manner and not run out of cash during an event like COVID-19. Look, I mean, Vacasa laid off 90% of their staff. I mean, that's just not good business. And I mean, these things we're talking about make a big difference in terms of which companies actually not only can get valuation at the beginning, but are a sustainable and growing and viable entity for the future. Profitability matters, and it really matters on the property management side.
Yeah. Do you have any questions for each other? I know
I think it matters for I think it matters for Mike and Jodi and Ben and those of us who ran vacation rental companies. I think Steve's right. Like, profitability is the currency for which you're going to sell your company, right? And I'd love to talk about multiples and how they're changing and kind of what people's expectations are. I know Ben's got a lot of experience with that. But for Vacasa, I mean, to their credit, if they pull off the IPO, which by all means, it certainly seems like they're gonna, I'm not interested in SPACs. I am interested in if this particular SPAC takes Vacasa public, particularly given Carl's role on turnkey. And I don't know enough about SPACs. I know there's some language in their K1 about whether they have to be, in a certain percentage control of the company they buy, but assuming there's an angle, either way, they go public, I think. Look at Airbnb's valuation, what, 125 billion? I mean, they don't have to, Airbnb's profitable in the third quarter, right? I mean, you don't have to be profitable to go public and get a big payday. You have to be profitable long-term to keep people investing in you, but that's different than I've got a vacation rental company that has 200 units in the Outer Banks. What am I worth? What should I be doing? I mean, I think that's the conversation worth having, right? What am I worth and what can I do to make my company worth more? You and I talked a little bit about that this morning.
Yeah.
Jason,
we discuss this too. Go ahead.
Real quick on that, and we keep hearing about the Airbnb valuation and how eyes are on our industry now. It's fundamentally different. I mean, what Vacasa does and what Airbnb do, in my opinion, is different. One's a full service boots on the ground manager, one's a website. But, so like, I guess maybe you guys know, but how are those two kind of related in the greater scheme of things?
I don't think they're related to our valuations other than bringing excitement into the market and ginning up the PE guys and bringing in the hotel money, right? Beyond that, I think the connection stops between what your company's worth and what kind of nutty valuations they may get, right?
No, it's a sector.
Look, here's
The sector is getting valued.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference because there's a foundation in one aspect and not in another. And I don't know about you guys, but in reading that Airbnb prospectus, I mean, Amy and I, you and I on the phone, we're literally yelling at each other about how they're putting these projections out there like think about the total global market. There's trillions of homes in the U.S. Think about all it's such a farce, right? There's no way. I mean, my wife would punch me in the face if I told her we were going on a vacation and staying in somebody else's house. I mean, it doesn't make sense. All that being said, it's still going to happen. All this stuff's going to happen. These guys are going to IPO. People are going to make a lot of money, and there's going to be a lot of people left holding the bag as a result, because I do not think these valuations are going to pan out. And the music's going to stop at some point. There won't be enough chairs for everybody.
Can I add it? I mean, I just want to jump in and switch. I want to hit competition on this really quickly. Like, why? So we all saw that Meredith Lodging is suing Vacasa for the way they've been targeting their homeowners. I think there are a lot of companies that will follow suit on that. Their marketing efforts are not quite what we've seen. However, I bet there was just a question, and it said, how does the value proposition, no, it's this one. I'm sorry, someone was talking about losing a homeowner. I've lost one or more properties to Vacasa due to what I would call predatory practices. Could use some wisdom from this group about how to defend. Like, how are they getting homeowners? I think that's my biggest question about them. Jodi, what are they doing?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And so I'll tell you locally for us, they are really, I feel like they're very persistent. And so they're sending out, they've called my owners, they've emailed my owners, they've sent postings. I mean, I do your regular owner acquisitions, but I'm not targeting. What sounds, I guess the word of the year I hear about vacation rentals, what sounds sexy to these owners is $5,000 guarantee over what you made last year. But what they don't tell these owners is that the way they're going to get it is drop your rates so low, so it's all about quantity going in. So at the end of the day, you're getting so much more wear and tear. And going back to what Mike was saying, money's not always the thing that gets us. When you get all that wear and tear and they come to use their family vacation home and it's really not in good shape because it's not being taken care of and it's not being watched like it should, then these owners, right, they left your company to go over here. What I found is, one, call your owners that you've lost and reach back out to them after 6 months and see how things are going, because I guarantee you it's not going well. But also how I combat it is what Jason was saying and Ben was saying. I'm owned. I locally own my properties or own my company. I work with my properties. I'm a phone call away. I'm available at all times. And that makes a huge difference. I've been getting owners lately because of basic practices. One is during COVID-19, during the I call the shutdown for 2.5 months. They've furloughed, I guess that's what you said. They furloughed all their employees. So no one ever went to their homes. So these homes for 2.5 months weren't being checked.
Yeah.
I didn't let go of my employees, and we were at our homes every week because I had nothing else for them to do. And so we were kept keeping eyes on the properties. That was an issue. Another one is I'm in a mountain area. We turn off water between rentals. Now you're gonna get busted pipes for you guys beach people. Like, that's not pretty. And they won't do it because it's a basic practice that they do. They don't understand the market here. And so if I have conversations, I have had a few owners wanting to move. I have talked them out of it. I'm like, of all companies, I'm like, they're not going to care about you at the end of the day. They care how much money they make. And that means they're going to overrun your house. And I'm not the discount brokerage. That's not my company.
Someone wrote in, I think he doesn't mind me saying the series, should we all give Vacasa the credit that they deserve? 2 weeks into this pandemic, they locked their doors and take their phone off the hook. They embarrassed every single one of us. I won't say the rest of it.
I'm not surprised, but you want to know what else? I'm not just seeing the owners, I'm seeing employees. I remember a few years ago, we were at a conference and they were handing out business cards saying we're hired to all my employees. I was pissed. And then now I have them marketing on social media, coming after my employees themselves, saying tailor-made employees come over. It's just not good practice. It's just, I found it just dirty.
The way you defend it, and to Ben's point, is if your business is if you deal in commodities, if you've got what everybody else has in the market, it's not built on heavy relationships, you don't have a moat around your business, and you don't get up every morning and figure out how to take better care of your employees and your property owners, then these companies have bigger marketing budgets. They're better at marketing religiously every day, all day, calling your people, and they're going to take your units. But if you built your company off of relationships and commitment to the community and employees, it's going to be much harder, right? You're not going to have to go out and consistently chase them to the bottom. They're going to beat you to the bottom. You're going to beat them by saying, well, listen, we're not the cheapest in town, we're the best in town. That's how you keep your business.
And
Yeah, Jason, that's
how we operate. Look, there's always going to be room for Vacasa, obviously, or a turnkey, or the next iteration of those guys, which will inevitably happen. I mean, and that's fine. But as us as property managers, and I'm speaking from a locally based property management company. I mean, great point about the moat around your business. I mean, we talk to our owners. We have their best interest in mind. If they decide to leave, that's fine. We don't burn bridges. And then we live off of referrals in the markets. I mean, we know agents, we know homeowners, and if we do a good job, they're going to be the best marketing, period. And that's sort of the way we operate.
Mike, another thing is that when we talked with Steve, you talked about profit. We always talk about, growing more owners, and word of mouth is great, but you forget sometimes about the retention of your own owners. And that's huge. It's not always about growth. Growth's not always the right growth. You might have some bad owners, bad revenue, or just terrible owners you got to get rid of, but you need to retain your good ones, and you need to spend a lot of time doing it. We focus heavily on owner retention, not just owner acquisition. And I think that, with people that know their owners, it's a little bit easier because it's just a phone call. You know, it's like family, so it's a little bit different.
And Steve does it different, but if you try to do it Steve's way, because I think it's a different business model, you better be damn good at marketing and distribution, and you better be able to get on stage and explain it at the level Steve can explain it, which I haven't run into many people who can. It's a hard model to make it. He's done extraordinarily well with it. Unless you're that good at it, I don't think that's the model you should chase.
Yeah, I would say that, you know, anyone on this call, there's really two options. One, in market, you know, buy your competitor who may want to go out of business or leave or retire or whatever. I mean, that's kind of a no-brainer way to do things. Or if you're looking to sell, you got to really think about who you're selling to, if you're being paid all in cash or if you're going to take seller notes. And ultimately, what are they going to do with your employees, your legacy, and the community that you've built up? Are they going to invest in advocacy, or are they going to basically strip mine your community and leave a bad taste in one's mouth? I mean, you're going to be walking down the street talking to some of your former owners or employees. You want to be able to hang your head high. I will say this, Jason, you know, it is not easy. This industry is complex. You know, to run a platform, it's hard, and it's hard to particularly do it profitable. And that's why it's so important in terms of the leadership. And when you see a lot of churn at the leadership position, particularly at the CEO, you know, that should really cause investors concern, because if a CEO comes in from outside the industry and starts hiring a bunch of non-industry people, normally it's a recipe for disaster. And look, I mean, I don't know how many investors are even on this call, but, you know, this is just fair warning. I mean, you're going to get what you deserve if you invest in the wrong company.
I'm reading a ton of questions coming through, but go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I'll just make this comment. You know, we've been, you know, I started out as a kid at Resort Quest and was working on M&A transactions on the buy side at the time. But since converting over and doing a lot of stuff under Weatherby, one of the questions that we asked people was, hey, are you going to remain in the market post-closing? And I said, well, why do you ask? I'm like, well, if you're going to sell to that company, you might not consider selling to them if you're going to be around, because they're going to leave a wake of owners and people that are upset. And I think that's something that's needs to be considered when, you know, like some of the folks mentioned here, if you're going to position your business to one of these well, I mean, to a Vacasa or you know, turnkey, you know, conglomerate. You know, it's, you know, we've been contacted recently by a number of people that just let go from Wyndham who I mean, Lino, you'll appreciate this. Some of these folks were, you know, had Abbott on their resume. I mean, they had been around for a long time. I'm just scratching my head why you'd let somebody with so much institutional knowledge go. But those are some things that you need to be cognizant of if you're going to head down that road.
Yeah, that great point, Ben. And that, you know, that's when you work with these people, as long as some of us have. And Steve, I want to, you know, just make sure, you know, with Resort Quest, we were actually, you know, profitable. We're the ones who bought Kaiser, you know, Realty out there, and we by and large left Glenn and the team to do what they do best, and that's run a company locally. And so I think there's a right or wrong way to do this business. If you centralize the headache and you decentralize the operations itself. So in other words, only centralize the things that drive local operators crazy and keep them off their focus, which should be on owners, guests, and their culture. If you can let the leaders lead and run their businesses as if they own them, you can be successful at scale with any brand, you know, in the business. Business development is something that's near and dear to my heart. It's a very different thing to be a disruptor in a industry versus just being disruptive. And the way that I've combated some of these things, you know, including, you know, these hollow guarantees. I had an owner at an annual meeting stand up that was with another company that gave these guarantees and said, hey, look, I've got a stack of contracts. This company will guarantee you 5,000 more than you've made, you know, this past year. I said, go ahead and read out loud the fine print as well. And he literally laughed and sat down. And the owners, nobody went over to him afterwards. So if you've got to use these little tricks and that sort of thing, how confident are you in your systems and services? And when you look back a year after you've done an acquisition, how many of those units are still with you? And to me, that's the key for any sustainable business. You know, I competed directly with a lot of the people, you know, on this call in the market in the Panhandle of Florida, but we did it respectfully. You know, we're going to trade units here and there. We're going to trade, you know, employees here and there, and that's fantastic. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I think another big issue is how technology comes into play. It is also a very different thing to claim you've got the best technology out there, and then the reality behind whether you do or not. You know, and so being on this side of the fence that I'm on now, and having some of the companies that have transitioned coming to me saying, oh my gosh, you know, I wish I had, you know, what you guys had back, because I'm flying blind today in housekeeping and maintenance and all this kind of stuff. I mean, there's a big veil over what is good technology versus what's just hobbled together, you know, sexy looking websites and distribution models. Let's talk how great distribution is, but let's not talk about how bad it is for the owner, Jodi, to your point, in ADR and net to owner, you know. And so I think there's a lot to uncover in how these businesses are consolidated, but I think all of which leads to great success and opportunity for local operators who do those basic things well.
Well, you might be remembering Resort Quest a little bit more fondly. Amy wrote a pretty nice white paper, Lino, and you know,
Lino can help me with the next chapter.
Resort Quest was unprofitable starting in 2001 and became progressively more and more unprofitable, particularly as they started to bleed money from the development of their technology. And
well,
that's
Steve,
what ultimately forced them to sell to Gaylord.
Well, Steve, remember, we bought Resort Quest from Gaylord. So you're absolutely correct up to that point. And the very first thing that Park and our investment group did was to get back to the basics. We actually moved the company from Tennessee, which we didn't have one single rental unit in Nashville. And we moved the headquarters back to the Gulf here in the Panhandle to get closer to the business, to get closer to the people, to the owners and the call center, you know. And so then ultimately we sold the business to Wyndham, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it, even at scale.
So Stefan is asking, our former, a lot of you remember him, Stefan, who used to be at Home Away, now at Vacay Stay Connect. So I'm going to read this question slowly. Owners look for the highest monthly checks. Can good local people, like everyone on the webinar, justify higher owner fees than what Vacasa charges and hang on to their homeowners year after year for higher fees?
That's not true.
More revenue.
They don't look for the highest every single time. That's the false narrative, I think, in all of this, is we're painting this huge broad brush that everybody who buys a second home is a absentee investor, like they're buying a mutual fund. You know, that's not the way it works. So I think everybody on here who's in property management who has been charges a fair rate, right? I'm not the cheapest guy in my market, you know, I'm not the most expensive, but you know, we're going to charge for our service, and if that limits my inventory growth, then so be it, right? I mean, so I think there's a point of no return sometimes when you're just trying to get unit after talk about it, you know, with other hosts of issues with scaling. So, you know, that's coming from I think a place of, you know, 30,000 feet, not on the ground, what we do every day.
You know,
Jodi, I know you've got a hard stop too, so if you want to.
yeah, I did want to add something here, is that you don't have to be, you know, it is competitive, and I'm in a very small market, but you know, it's a race to the bottom sometimes. So I think that you hold it where you are, you got to charge what's fair, but also, you know what, you're worth something. You know what I mean? Your time is worth something. So you should be doing a fair management fee, and you could work on fee. We could talk about fees till I'm blue in the face, and I don't have time because I do have a hard stop. But I think there's a way. So the race to the bottom is not the answer. And I do think if you hold a management fee at a certain rate, owners will pay for it. It's quality they want. It's not just quantity. And I've found that, and I have gone through different kinds of promotions and tried different effective measures. They're not all there. Like that guarantee, the guarantee really didn't work for my owners when you do a certain guarantee, especially doesn't work when you're in COVID. So, I think you should charge a fair management fee because you are the boots on the ground. And you have a lot to offer.
Hey, Amy, I'll make this comment as well. I would put our revenue up against any of these companies out there. I mean, we produce a significant amount of revenue. Everybody on this call does. But I will tell you this, I've been into some of these properties after we've taken them over from these larger companies. Having walked into these properties, if that was one of my properties on my rental program, that house manager would have been fired that afternoon. There's no way we would have put that product out there. If you open up a drawer and it looks like somebody welded 4,000 forks together, that's a problem. That's not the kind of product that we put out. So I think we produce the revenue, but I also think we take care of the homes. And I don't know. I mean, look, there's something to be said if there, well, I won't go there at this point, but I think we produce the revenue, and no one's told me that or proved to me otherwise.
Yeah, I think that kind of the reason that question is interesting to me is the perception could be that these companies are providing more revenue to the homeowner than local companies, but I don't know a market where that's true.
Well, it's a
a better mousetrap.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're brand driven and you're saving money on the OTA listings, you got a good chance of driving more revenue.
Yeah, Amy, I'll just add that there's a big difference between gross and net, and the devil is right in between those two. And there's certain things that you can hide by having the customers, the actual vacationers pay for it with higher fees and the like. But when you start measuring the difference between total guest output and net to bottom line of owner, there's a major variance in these larger companies, that are focused on just that.
John Spezio has a really interesting question here. Does the commoditization of the industry encourage or drive self-management?
Well, self-management, I think, is a pendulum probably swinging back the other way. So, I mean, that's a completely different discussion. So give or take, 50% of the owners in North America self-manage, and 50% select a property management company. Generally, the customers or owners with smaller units will self-manage. Owners with bigger units are going to typically elect a property manager. I think COVID really exposed the weakness of self-managing, particularly if you were just on one platform, particularly if you're on Airbnb, because of the extenuating circumstance and the fact that COVID disrupted, obviously, the customer base, and you had to literally replace those customers very quickly. So I'm not sure that we're going to see rent by owner continue to increase. Probably the natural component where that goes is it'll start to decrease a little bit over time. But part of this is based on how much people that were rent by owner really got burned by these platform players.
It'll be interesting. I tell you, Ocean City could be an interesting market to watch for that. A lot of their owners are drive to, and now that Vacasa has taken such a major stake in market share there, it could be interesting to watch.
Steve, it's amazing. It's amazing how short people's memories are with the COVID shutdown stuff. Though, all you see now and all I hear, and even just in my little neck of the woods, is people on Airbnb. It's like nothing ever happened, and so you're always going to have that segment of property, and that's completely fine. I think, again, as a professional manager, you build your business around the people that need your services, and frankly, some of those don't need your services.
I think, so when I hear RBO, I think it's important to mention there's two types of RBOs out there. There's the one one person who really does a phenomenal job at managing and is operating in a manner that I think we would appreciate. Then there's the other person who's just who's really just trying to scrape the cream off the top that I end up dealing with, or historically have ended up dealing with from an on-site management standpoint. And we get their guests coming to our front desk, or come to our office saying, "Hey, this is broken." We're like, "Well, you're not staying with us." And their response is like, "Well, are you going to help me or what?" And then we get the bad review. I mean, I think it's largely dependent upon where your motivation is. If you want to do this and do it right, more power to you. If you're going to be a part of the community, you're going to do things that are accretive to the community, great. But if you're going to be one of those folks that try to rip everything off and get your, save 20%, I think that's pretty frustrating from a professional property management standpoint.
On the RBO side, as far as turnkey goes, much of their organic growth was from RBOs. They weren't taking, inventory from property managers in the very beginning, and not even much later. When I was working there in marketing, we had an entire room full of kids who were just scraping RBO, VRBO or Verbo now. Sorry.
Well,
media.
I think there's a debate on this panel as to how good of a business model turnkey actually had. I heard someone said it was a good business model. I pretty much disagree that it was not a good business model.
Did I miss that?
I didn't say it was good. I said it was getting close to profitable and better than Vacasa.
I do think they handled COVID better than Vacasa. If you had to really compare COVID, COVID response, turnkey did a much better job.
It's hard to throw COVID in there. That's a complete outlier. But having said that, you can certainly see the difference between the large the large national player and the local company in reviews and how that was handled. And believe me, we looked at reviews and it was, some folks took it on the chin for sure.
There's a saying, when you merge two bad companies together, you don't get a good company.
What was your quote in the article, Steve, about opposite day?
Well, I mean, it's hard to take seriously an industry leader that's not investing in advocacy, that laid off 90% of their people because they ran out of cash and had to get an emergency $100 million bailout to get liquidity at a down round to their shareholders, which probably not a good day for those shareholders. Ben's right. I mean, there's enough, interest in this sector that probably there's going to be liquidity. But at the end of the day, the investors, if they're smart and they're intelligent, are going to take a look not at just what they get on the opening day IPO, unless they're just flipping the IPO, but how long is the company viable? Everybody wants the next Amazon, Facebook, company where they just buy and just close their eyes and let it go. And this sector has so much potential. I mean, this sector is part of the future with shared transportation. And it's really about which companies, which management teams, which business models are sustainable. That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about whether Vacasa is going to have some type of liquidity event. We're talking about sustainability. And at the end of the day, that's the question that every investor should be asking, and every property manager on this call or webinar should be, do you want to sell to a company that has a sketchy business model? I mean, this is your legacy at stake, and it's really something you should think about. And, if you get a bunch of cash up front and you don't have any, worries about it, then do it. But if it's something where you can't even come to terms with the fact, are they going to keep your employees? Are they willing to put that into the APA? Are they, what are they going to do with your brand? Are they keeping you on as a consultant or employee? I mean, these are important questions you should be asking, because you've built a business, you put your life into that business, and you have a legacy that hopefully is important to you.
Let's talk about selling. The question I get asked a lot, I should be just doing lead gen for Ben right now. Is now really the time to sell the company? Jason, you did. You had, I don't know what percentage you own, but it was a lot. You hoarded equity. You didn't give that up. You didn't raise money to grow. Do you think you did it right?
I'm happy with my decision. I sold to what I think is a great company that's taking care of my employees, and I think is going to build a good company long term. I don't like to look back. We sold in a weird year, right? kind of a crazy time. We started our M&A stuff right before COVID hit. It hit right in the middle of it, and then we came back up. So I wish it would have been an easier year to sell in. And of course, if I had the hindsight and I knew this was going to be the greatest revenue generating year ever for vacation rentals, I would have held out a few months. But look, I mean, I feel really good about what we did and our decision to sell, but it's a very personal decision, right? I had a company that I wanted to put a lot of time and energy and money into with key data, and it afforded me the ability to do that. And we were at a spot where, we were ready to go on to the next chapter, and I felt good about where we were leaving it. But I don't view it as is it time to sell or is it time not to sell? I think it's a very personal decision about what you want out of life in your next chapter. I do think it's a good time to sell. There's a hell of a lot of interest in the community. I think multiples for each level of kind of 3 tiers, different multiples you get. I'm interested in Ben's thought, but I think they're all up. And so one of the conversations real quick that we had this morning, I think was real beneficial about if you go to sell, that Ben teaches and Jim teaches, and I've learned a lot from them over the years, is if you're thinking about it, or even if you're possibly not thinking about it, it's a good time to clean house. Like when you go to sell your house, you finally plant the flowers out front and paint the stuff and fix the doors. Same thing with your business. Like the fundamentals of financials and legal and just how you run your business, not the housekeeping and cleaning and employees, but getting your house in order can have as big an impact on the value you get as anything. And I think Ben would probably tell you that too many houses aren't in order. And so if you're thinking about it now or you're thinking about it later, get with one of them and figure out what's not in order and get it in order. And you'll add significant value to your business, whether you sell it or not.
We've got a number of open transactions right now, but I've not seen the influx of people, I mean, frankly, ever, that wanted to get their house in order. When we kind of preach financial anxiety in the industry. I mean, and we do it in such a way that we're trying to motivate you to get your house in order. And I think, Amy, and you and I talked about this. This was a part of my session that we did in Sandestin, where a lot of us were kind of punch drunk, riding this wave. Everybody was fat and happy. And what we try to tell people is that you could ride the wave into the shore and things would be great, or you can get crushed by the wave. And unfortunately, I think the pandemic, kind of did that for some of the folks. Other folks were able to navigate it, but it's a reminder that we as a group, we as an industry, need to run our businesses like a business and have a meaningful profit. I can sell a business that's put together well for maximum value all day long. If your business is not put together and not profitable and not sustainable, as Steve mentioned, it can sell, but you're just not going to get maximum value for it. So it's just a question of how you want to go about things.
It's that quote, you can't go making money, right?
Yeah, I mean, Amy,
Yeah,
in terms of your question, I do think there's quite a few sellers right now in the market, probably a little bit more than buyers right now. Some of it's mental fatigue. You've had sellers who've really just taken, have had a real tough time with COVID, and not everyone's as fortunate as some of us to live in the South, and they were operating businesses in areas that were locked down. I mean, we're lucky. I mean, we had Hawaii and New Mexico that were pretty much shut down, but we had Florida and South Carolina and Tennessee that were pretty much open. So some of this is, how much cash flow do the companies have? And then also really, are you able to find buyers that are going to use your 2019 numbers to provide valuation? Because from the numbers we've seen, most companies didn't do well in 2020. They just didn't. So you're probably not going to want to trade on your 2020 numbers. So, these are important conversations to have. We've been lucky. People have reached out to us. And we're looking at areas where we're in the same market. So it's a little easier for us to assess the, inherent intrinsic value of the companies. But I'd say there's a lot of sellers that are looking to get out just because, a year ago, some of us didn't know we'd be still in business. I mean, we had governments that weren't allowing us to operate. It was a pretty scary time. So, if this is something in many cases is the person's biggest asset in their life, they may be leaving this to their children or grandchildren. And, exiting and liquidity and how you do this are critically important. So, these are important conversations. They're pretty nuanced, and Ben's right. The more planning you do, the better.
I'm going to hit some of these questions up really quickly and some of these comments, and then we'll kind of try to wrap this up. But so Scott Breon's on the call. Hey, Scott. He's been piping in through this conversation, but I do think this is important. He said several of the acquisitions saw net to owners double in the year after integration. Most of the acquisitions see 20 to 30%. That's in this increase. Not every time, but in aggregate, the vast majority of owners do see increased net. And he said, you've got the National League All-Star team on the call saying that the American League All-Star team is a shit because they have a designated hitter, but most are playing in the minor leagues. So
go ahead, Andy. I have a response to that.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I said pretty clearly, if they were such a well-run organization, why did they lay off 90% of their people during COVID and have to get emergency down round funding? So, I mean, we can kind of put lipstick on a pig, but, it doesn't change what it is. It was a bad business model. Hopefully they're cleaning it up. Hopefully they learned the hard way, because shareholders at Vacasa, common shareholders at Vacasa, got the heck diluted out of themselves. And, I get that the PE firms, particularly Silver Lake, probably have preferred because they put in money in a down round. But I mean, this is not a business model to emulate if you're a founder owner looking to bring in capital from an investment firm.
No, but they didn't want to be that. It was a business model built on growth, not on revenue, right? And I do think Turnkey had a sustainable business model that was getting there, but I think they were built for something different. They were built to get big and get an IPO, and I think they're going to get it. And to Eric's point, I mean, they picked up a lot of companies, and they had, a full team of, data scientists doing pricing on the hour down in South America. Like, they can improve the bottom line for companies who weren't run well, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. If you're a company that's not doing anything for pricing and aren't running it well, sell it to somebody and make a good living off of it, right?
To Scott's point, look, he's right. He's right. But so are we, because there's no absolute in this game. He may have bought he may have drafted somebody from single A ball, and he's able to push him up above the Mendoza line. But I think we're all right. And I was not speaking in absolutes. I think in certain cases they've been able to gen up some revenue. But
I want to finish his comment really quickly. He said, but most are playing and cut off before. He said most are playing in the minor leagues or even T-ball. You see a lot of P&Ls.
I think that's fair, but he's going to get those returns when he buys a bunch of T-ball teams.
Right.
Amy, the only thing I'll add to that is that, when you look at the number of acquisitions you hear about, 150, 160, 120, and you just do the quick math, right? Forget the complicated formulas that only Ben can figure out, but the quick math, what is the average size of the acquisitions that you've done just in the last couple of years? 40 units, 46 units, 65 units. You can literally take 46 units and just put them on booking.com and raise revenue. And if you do any yield management at all, you can certainly make a dent there as well. So stop it with the genius and God, syndromes here, and look at the industry and what there's a lot of locals, even just on this call, that are running circles around these bigger businesses and taking units left and right from them. That's the question that these big brands have to answer for themselves. If it's so great, if it's working so well, why are you shrinking outside of raising more money and buying more stuff?
I'm just doing the quick math, and you're so right. If you take away the Wyndham and the Turnkey acquisition from their reported 30,000 properties, that's 2. They say they have 159 acquisitions, so minus 2, that's 157. There's zero organic growth at that company. There would have to be.
It's genius to lay off 90% of your staff and run out of cash and have to get emergency cash inflow from a VC at a down round. I mean, look, hopefully they learn from this, and hopefully they're going to be better. I mean, we'll see if leadership, addresses some of the issues that happen. I mean, Lino's right. Also, the fact that so much talent they just let go. I mean, I just can't even begin to understand why, other than the fact that the leadership got rid of the the founders of the company and a lot of the people that built Vacasa, and it's now a completely different management team from outside the industry that doesn't know the operations. Look, everybody on this call, and that included Jodi, we started off in this business. We started off at the very, very beginning growing the company. I started with one unit and worked my way up. I mean, I understand maintenance and cleaning and service and all the things in between. That's something that someone from outside the industry doesn't understand. And it's hard to lead when you don't understand the underpinnings of what it takes to be successful. So, I get that, Scott wants to talk about the one thing they've done right and take some isolated examples. I'll say all day long, look, you ran out of cash. You needed an emergency bail or you'd be gone. So there's no genius there.
You guys can pipe in, I'm reading. How does the value proposition of a non-local company compared to local for guests and for homeowners? Who is better positioned competitively?
Well, that's a loaded question, because I think everybody on this call would tell you that local operators in general are better at a market, right? And we've seen that over and over again. Our major competitors in our market is Vacasa, Turnkey. It's going to be, there's a local competitor in every single market that does an excellent job, an exceptional job. Mike's market, Ben's markets, Jason's market, Lino market, there's always a local operator. And so, when you have a really strong local operator, they typically either dominate or close to dominate the market. The question has to do with what happens when a national company buys that top leading local operator. Are they able to create that consistency, or did they lose it and ultimately have someone else that takes their place? And that certainly happened with Jodi's company. I mean, Realty was the market leader, and Jodi's company came in and took control of Deep Creek just by persistence and execution. Mike, what do you see? Because you started a company. I mean, Mike's a great example. I mean, he was working for another company as the president and CEO, and then he took all the risk and started his own company.
Yeah, I mean, in my markets, and I'm in multiple markets, but my markets are relatively adjacent. So I mean, I'm not like far flung all over the place, so I can drive there, easily and get there. But I mean, at this point, we don't have Vacasa in any of our markets. We did have Turnkey. You had Turnkey, and they were kind of scattered around.
Why do you think that is, Mike?
What's that?
Why do you think that is, Mike?
Because I'm there, probably. I'm sure they have it on the radar, and they'll be here at some point, But we're not necessarily worried about it. They may get some low-hanging fruit, just like Turnkey did, and and I have respect for Turnkey, I have respect for Vacasa, But like Steve said, I mean, we're so entrenched, not only with our experience level here in the areas, but also our infrastructure. We have such a head start. It's just going to be difficult for them to come in and just completely wipe out our business. But remains to be seen what they do.
Sorry, I have myself on mute. It sounded like you wanted to say something about that. Like, is it the North Carolina beaches? Why aren't they there?
Well, because it's in North Carolina. I mean, so they figured that part out. It's just there's a lot of markets in North Carolina.
I think it's a regulatory thing. I think they gravitated towards states that are easier to operate in.
I mean, like they picked up like things like Asheville and stuff like that, where they don't have that same accountability. I think.
Well, they got the Outer Banks through the Wyndham acquisition, so now they have
Hatteras. That's right.
Hatteras and Corolla.
Yeah. The Hatteras market's kind of interesting to me. So you looked at all of the Gulf Shores, all of the Panhandle, Resort Quest type stuff. When they purchased the Hatteras people have stayed. Lino, do you have any insight into that? I'm sorry, Banner, go ahead.
I'll just jump in real quick. The Hatteras people stay because Wyndham for the large part left them alone. I mean, those people, not that Wyndham was going to impose any onerous operating mandate, but Amy, Helly, and team were, I mean, they're part of the best of the best. And when we put that deal together with Wyndham, Wyndham recognized that. Wyndham said, hey, yeah, we've got a few hoops that you may have to jump through, but by and large, Lino and those guys let that business continue to run. At the same time, they let the Vacation Palm Springs business run, which was a phenomenal business. They bought some Class A assets and then continued to what I think they did is they made them better. I mean, those acquisitions were accretive, whereas some of the ones that we've been discussing from some of the other players have not been.
Lena, do you have anything you want to add about Hatteras?
No, I think Ben really, organized the thoughts well around that. Yeah, I think for the Panhandle, being a drive-to market's different than having a market that's relying upon a lot of third-party channels and flights and everything else. It's just a much different business. But we recently, with the new company, took over a property in Destin, and out of 35 employees, 34 opted to come along with the new brand versus staying where they were. That speaks a lot to culture. And if you go on sites like Indeed and Glassdoor and you look at ratings for employees and how they rate their own culture, their own company, that tells a story. And again, so I love hearing from the big league major players about how great things are, but every metric that you look at and really pull the curtains back on, it's a failing proposition, but yet they're so proud that they're the experts. That gets in my craw sometimes when I look at what's happening to the business that's really not growing. It's kind of falling apart.
Lena, this one's for you too. Do you think Vacasa would have to report owner retention figures in their S1?
I would hope that they would, because to me that's the primary metric of how your service is being accepted by your customers, and if it's non-congruent, you got big issues down the road. And so I go back to you really just looking at the net growth after acquisition. If your distribution is better, if your employee pay scales are better, if your operating model is better, why the negative numbers after acquisition if all that's true? And so yes, that should be reported. And to Steve's point, and I think others, ultimately the shareholder is going to be left with a problem if the business they're investing in isn't sustainable. And that's the piece that really doesn't get enough attention in these roll-ups.
Going through that SEC process with Resort Quest as a kid, having to help compile these annual reports, unit count was a large part of that process. Unit count and gross rental revenue, and so I can't imagine that wouldn't be a part of their IPO process, or at least highlighted through it.
Yeah, Ben, there's a difference in, and I've had a lot of conversations about unit growth, right? And it's always about the additive. How many did you get? How many are you now? But the math behind that, what is good growth versus just growth for growth's sake? Is the units you're bringing on, are they profitable overall for the company? And so I finally, right before I left Wyndham, was able to get our folks to stop looking at just a single number of unit count as a true measure of portfolio health. I look at gross, but I look at net as well. And would you rather have 10 more of these or just one more of those over there with a great, relationship and revenue model and the like? And so there's a lot more that goes into that.
Look, I think that's a really good point. And I don't know which company you were talking about earlier, Amy, but you said one of them converted a lot of RBOs. Look, inherently, RBOs don't want to turn over their calendars. So it's great that you picked up a unit, but are you really picking up any revenue? And I don't think so. I mean, those RBOs are still going to block out peak weeks. They're still going to take everything they can from you, because that's what they do by nature, right? So the fact that you've organically converted some RBOs, more power to you, but I just don't think it produces revenue.
It goes back to that unit count thing that you guys are talking about. That now, granted, for me, it's easy to report on unit count. You don't share profitability. You guys don't share with me EBITDA. We have to really get you guys to have some budget cocktails before we can get any information that we can, for these articles. So it's unit count is the one thing that we can find out, so that's why it's on the media side that it's a big deal.
It's completely misleading. Unit count is completely misleading. It's unit revenue economics, and it's actually market unit revenue economics. We've spent a lot of time, getting rid of underperforming units. So, and part of it is also how good you are internally about, honestly offboarding owner contracts. So, I mean, you can manipulate the numbers, and as long as investors are chasing unit count, companies are going to probably be willing to kind of cut corners to try to inflate unit count numbers. But those are the wrong metrics. I mean, they are very, very bad metrics. I mean, we're buying a book of business in a market and we're paying 4x what we paid in another market. I mean, per unit. I mean, it's because the market's a different market.
Amy, I think the thing you could get people to talk about is margin. And if you're not making a 10 to 12% margin on your business, then you're not doing something right. We have businesses that produce in excess of a 12% margin, but one that produces in excess of a 20% margin. We have.
But you tell me that 8 was kind of like okay.
Look, I think 8 is the number I throw out there not to hurt somebody's feelings.
Dang.
I mean, look, 8's a good day's work. I mean, if you're making money, but Steve mentioned this, I don't know how many years ago, but just because you've got a $80 or $90, $100,000 salary in a business and no profit doesn't mean you have a business. It's not a sustainable business. That's more like a hobby at this point. I mean, it's a meaningful profit is excess cash flow in a material amount, and one that can has perpetuating operational structure to it.
That revenue margin number is really what investors should be looking at. So it's that revenue, your revenue minus your percentage of your EBITDA to revenue. That margin number is indicative of the ability of the management team to run a business, and it should be going up or certainly not going down. The more it goes up, the healthier the business is. Again, I mean, if you're concerned about EBITDA, if all you want is revenue, then you don't care about EBITDA, you don't care about unit economics. But if you're actually running a good business and you want to ultimately sell and get a strong multiple, because most of the deals we do, one way or another, we're trying to figure out what the profit of the company is. That revenue margin is pretty darn critical.
One of the things that we see a lot in articles and again for the media side is take rate. There's so much of that conversation. So does take rate matter for a property manager? Is that a metric that's important?
I hate that term, by the way, take rate. It just sounds so like you're illegal. But so if you're talking about fees we earn for the job we do, then I think it does matter ultimately. So and that's another very market dependent number. I mean, in some markets, you always hear the 30% out west. Over here, it's not even close to that. So we're able to do some other things, provide additional services to help, produce more revenue. But I mean, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because, as an investor, if they paint the same brush that this is what you're supposed to earn, they're going to be disappointed, if they go one market versus the other.
Look, I think you've got to have an effective, a material effective commission rate. I mean, that's fundamentally what we're talking about. And we're in the business of making money. You don't have to make all your money off of housekeeping and maintenance, but you've got to be profitable, break even, and you have to show that you have a material effective commission rate in order to produce a material margin.
Jason, when you were selling your business, what did they want to know about you?
Same thing they want to know about every business, whether you're selling widgets, right? Are you profitable, and are you going up on the core metrics? So to me, it's I love those fancy terms, but to me, it's real simple. Like, am I adding properties? Am I adding revenue? Most importantly, am I adding, to the bottom line? Did I go from 2 million EBITDA to 3 million to 4 million? Do I have a nice, smooth, even curve? And is it predictable where I'm going to be, right? If somebody comes in and pays you a 5 multiple or 10 multiple or whatever you're lucky enough to get, they've got to earn it back. So they want to know immediately, like, is it going to take me 3 years to earn it back or 5 years to earn it back or what? It's all they're trying to do is look at your growth curve and predict where it's going to be and figure out, is this a good investment for me, right? And so if you're not tracking over time, which is surprisingly something a lot of people aren't doing, and we weren't doing it for a very long time. We were just trying to get to critical masses. What's my property growth over time? What's my revenue over time? What's my, revenue per unit over time? If you're not dropping properties that are unprofitable, like Steve said, which a lot of people don't do, you don't have to get fancy in your metrics. Clean up your accounting, clean up your legal, and get your charts to go up and to the right.
How about shutting down offices, Jason? I mean, we've shut down a couple offices that just didn't make sense. I mean, look,
Yeah.
I mean, I run this like a business. I mean, I'm not trying to keep unit count. I'm trying to be profitable. I'm trying to grow my EBITDA margins every single year. And I mean, I don't care about the optics of whether, we have to shut down some offices because the unit economic or the market unit economics don't work. I mean, look, at the end of the day, this is a business. You're looking for executives that know how to run a business, be profitable. And if you're selling, the important things that Ben is talking about, which is, your bottom line, and you can add back your salary, sure, your benefits and all those things. But I mean, that's what you're ultimately going to be valued on. And yeah, there'll be some other things like revenue and unit count. We can back our way into a purchase on that. But if you maximize your EBITDA, you're going to maximize your potential purchase or sale.
I think it's interesting that we talk about having to flush some of these properties out. I mean, look, everybody has, as Pedro Mendoza used to call them, these dogs that would kind of creep in. You get these dogs that kind of creep into your business, and you got to flush them out, right? These properties that don't produce. But if you're like literally flushing, a material amount of properties, it tells me that your business model not set up the right way. We will tell people from time to time that I'm afraid we're not going to be able to meet your expectations, or this is not the right fit. But I mean, that's rare, right? We're really focused on pulling, and like, as I've reviewed some of the best businesses in the industry, they're really focused on the right properties. That was one thing that I can say that Resort Quest did not do well back in my tenure in 2000 to 2005. They thought unit count meant more money, and it's not the unit count. It's the right properties on your program. These RBO conversions that you guys were talking about earlier, you couldn't pay me to take on RBO conversions. I don't want somebody who thinks they can do it all themselves. They think they're the professional. We're the professional in the markets in which we operate, and we deliver a quality service.
Yeah, we dropped 20% of our inventory in a couple of years, each year leading up to our sale, because growth in EBITDA is more important than growth in properties, right?
Right.
If you look at our property growth, it took a big dip, but what was more important was that the EBITDA was going to keep growing, right? Your bottom line.
Margins.
One of the questions about margins that someone had is, are the net margin percentage numbers been mentioned based on nightly rental rate only?
What? No, they would be based on your monthly or yearly. I mean, if you're running, hopefully you're running a P&L and you're running a monthly P&L and you have a budget variance. I mean, go ahead, Ben.
I mean, you can speak to this as much as I can. Whoever that is, call me on my cell phone. It's on my website, and I'll talk to you confidentially. But what we're talking about, because these software systems have different nomenclature, everybody talks about the business differently. But if you've got a rental that's renting for $100 a night, before you add all these fees and all this other stuff, that $100 a night is called gross rental revenue. Okay, we're talking about the gross. So for all intents and purposes, if you have a business that does $8 million of gross rental revenue, I think at a minimum, you should probably bring, I don't know, $700,000 to $800,000 from bottom line. I mean, that's where I think it should be.
So
I
this
think
is an interesting, there are a
yeah.
couple of questions that are tying in, so I'm going to try to summarize them. So like looking at 2022, so I think we all think, you know, in most drive to leisure vacation rental markets, 2021 is looking pretty strong if they're able to open. I know Hawaii is still has a lot going on, but so what happens in 2022? Are we able to match that? A lot of people are asking about or several people are asking to crystal ball 2022, but then someone else brought in, if you were trying to sell and 2021 was your peak year, if you were looking down the road, if 2022 did not look as strong as 2021, would there be an anomaly with COVID? No, what would you do in that case with a decrease?
I mean, Ben, this guy's can talk about this probably a lot better. I would not worry about that. I mean, you can't worry about that, right? So, you know, just keep your head down and keep running your business as best as possible. You know, and if you got a good company, I know Ben will tell you this, if you have a good company, that's the least of your worries, right?
Well, and as people are vaccinated, they're going to travel. I mean, you know, we lost revenue in first quarter because there were pockets of people, particularly elderly people, that just weren't traveling. So, I mean, I would expect 2022 to be a far more robust period because, first of all, the advanced bookings are going to be a little bit longer into the cycle, so you're going to have more time to fill in your calendar as opposed to last minute, which should allow you to better yield manage your calendar. And second, there's just going to be more consumers that are going to travel. I mean, I think Canada will probably be open and maybe some other places. So, I mean, I would consider that 2022 to be a pretty robust year, all things considered.
Yeah, every seller is going to say next year is going to be better, and every buyer is going to say next year is going to be worse. And so, make your argument when it's time to sell.
Jason, taking off your PM hat and putting on your data hat, you've been studying this data. Are you noticing an increase in the feeder markets, like a more spreading out and expansion of feeder markets to these areas, or is it still super close even with advanced bookings?
No, it's fantastic in every direction. Expansion of markets, growth, revenue, and like the Steve point, except for the ones that are shut down, who our thoughts are with, the rest of the markets are on fire, and people have double on the books all over the place that they had on the books last year. The question is how much of it will stick, and I don't have a better guess than you guys. We don't have revenue on the books for 2022 yet. You know, as soon as we do, we'll have a glimpse of it. But right now, we're definitely having a good moment. And the question is, will our, you know, accommodations and our hospitality and our service keep these people, or will the hotels fight back and the cruises gain their market share and international travel take some away from us? And I think that's going to be in part depending upon how we treat our guests this summer and how well we do, right?
Do we have a supply problem?
Okay, well, that's a separate question. Yeah, there's a huge supply problem. So I think that's the biggest challenge in this sector in terms of also educating investors, which is there's far more demand than supply, far more, particularly of resort inventory. You know, a lot of the inventory that was created, you know, was created between early 90s and 2006 before the housing bubble, you know, burst. And since that housing bubble burst, we haven't seen a lot of investment in real estate, particularly because banks wouldn't finance it. They wouldn't, you know, finance speculative building because they got, you know, torched on, you know, people just giving back second homes. And, you know, that's resulted in a lot of inventory dichotomy, and particularly in states like Florida where people are moving now, they don't care if they're buying a vacation rental. If they're coming in full time, they're going to take a vacation rental off the table. So, you know, it's a pretty severe issue. You know, it's a problem, but it's also an opportunity. It's why there's so, you know, when you have more demand than supply, you have the ability to kind of maneuver pricing to OTAs, add fees, things like that. I mean, you know, those are the advantages. The downside is if you're trying to get inventory from a competitor, it's hand-to-hand combat normally. It's not, you know, the competition is normally not just handing you a set of the keys. They're trying to keep that owner as well. And the only way that this paradigm changes is the development of new inventory which is starting. Certainly on the Panhandle, we see towers going up. Gatlinburg, we've seen a lot of new builds. So, some of the markets we're starting to see capital flow in, and it's flowing in particular from urban markets. So, ultimately, we're going to start to see, more supply created. But it could be years, if not decades, before the supply-demand imbalance is fulfilled.
Yeah, Amy, I've got a slightly different read on the supply issue. I think we've got a seasonal supply issue in a lot of cases, but when you run average annual occupancies and you've got markets that are 46%, 52%, that doesn't really lead itself to a discussion of oversupply. But seasonality, absolutely. We've got to flatten the seasonality curve where we can. I think that's a big opportunity. In some of these markets, the new construction is just taking out the old junk that's been there forever, and that's a good thing as well. But I think that the industry itself is absolutely the most exciting sector in lodging, and will continue to grow as more and more. And I think this is where Airbnb IPO helped. This is where HomeAway and VRBO did a really good job from an awareness perspective of the industry. We can argue whether you use them as distribution, platforms or not. But I'll tell you that I think in many cases there's plenty of inventory. Even looking at some locations versus the others that are just down the street. Panama City, as an example, to Destin is half of the rate of Destin on any given day. Well, why is that? Well, because in the 2000s they built 4,000 new units in the time that Destin did over 20 years. And so they haven't caught up yet. The demand to that location has not caught up yet. The units are there.
I have access to some pretty good internal data, and that doesn't match what you're saying, Lino.
Enjoy coaching, Mike.
Thank you.
Take care, Mike.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, the internal data I'm showing shows occupancy pretty much exploding year over year, and that was even before pandemic. We had markets that were significantly ahead even in January and February, and now we're running against pandemic numbers. There's just no question that in almost every market we're in, with the exception of Hawaii, there's far more demand than supply. Hawaii's got travel restrictions, which are, once those lower, I'll be curious to see what happens there, because if you don't have to take a COVID test to get over to Hawaii, I think Hawaii rebounds fairly quickly. Look, it's a good position for the industry to be in, that there's a lot of demand. The demand is actually going to increase, not decrease, because you've got, initiatives like Google Vacation Rentals that are coming on. So, the opportunity is for companies who are strong property managers to work with builders, real estate agents, et cetera, to get new inventory, because new inventory is really the holy grail.
I think new inventory is the holy grail. I don't disagree with you, but I've got a partner in Texas who really pioneered that area of the world, and our occupancy has gone through the roof. Our ADR has gone through the roof, and he has nothing to sell. He has hundreds of acres right now that they are, they're being, thoughtful about how they open that up, and there's development, and then there's development. I look at what he's done in the Port Aransas area, and the common area infrastructure is twice what comparable properties have done. He has 3 pools, instead of 1 pool. He has large green spaces. I think you're going to see this push to develop, but I think people will ultimately gravitate towards these more thoughtful designs than maybe the towers that just shoot up with no amenities.
Than a Phoenix and Orange Beach.
So we look forward to answering this question with deep data analytics in the coming months with Demand IQ.
Really? I'm so glad. I just have one more series of types of questions that are coming through, and then I'll let you guys go. It's about technology. And this came up, Steve and you and I discussed this week. Does technology really help a property management company scale?
Yeah, look, there's no question been one of the companies that's been able, really leverage technology, and we've done really well. I mean, I told you before, I mean, we significantly outperformed our 2019 EBITDA numbers in 2020. 2021, we're going to double our 2019 EBITDA numbers. We've increased our margin, our CAGR. I mean, everything has just been increased because we've leveraged technology to decrease our cost of sales as well as our G&A, and to be more efficient with distribution, which I think has really separated companies. As I've looked at books of businesses under NDA, the companies that really struggled were ones who really had limited distribution. When I say limited distribution, I mean where their inventory flowed to. So the companies who are really dependent just on direct, or the companies that were dependent just on Airbnb, or the companies that were just dependent maybe on VRBO, those companies really suffered because COVID created massive disruption. Now that's obvious, but it meant that you had to win back new customers, because some of the customers that disrupted weren't able to come to your location, even if you loved them, even if they came every year. They were in states or they were of an age that they didn't want to travel. So you had to go get new customers. And the companies that had a lot of distribution were able to find new customers. So what Jason, data shows is the average drive-in radius more than doubled. We had people coming 500, 700, 800 miles to, some of our locations, and that was unheard of. So technology makes a major difference, and I think one of the things that's happened is that there's really a separation between kind of the haves and have-not that are comfortable with technology. And I understand that if you're at a point where you just don't want to invest in new technology because it's an investment, it's time, it's resource, it's difficult. It may be, that's why we're seeing so many people that want to sell right now, because it's been very, very difficult for some of these companies out there. But if you're not going to sell, invest in technology. Get onto an enterprise platform that's going to allow you to be able to manage your data easy, and not to have to throw bodies at things, and that can consolidate some of the various service providers you utilize. I mean, these are real discussions we had when we did, the Vacation Software Advisory Committee. And, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah, Amy, this is where I need to chime in and thank Steve for being such a long time and dedicated, customer of BeHome247.com. So Steve, thank you for that absolute tee up, brother. He's absolutely right, though. And I would, tell you that technology can help you scale a business and centralize and automate things that otherwise you throw people at and process at. There are ways to be much more efficient in your business today that can allow you the time to then focus on the owners and guests and your culture. Pushing paper between departments or around desks, those are so 10 years ago now with what technology can do for you if you invest the time. And in many cases, when we as a company go into a new customer, we'll actually dislocate 4 or 5 different individual point solutions that your operators are having to manage and automate them into a single platform that can do that work for them. So I think it is way past time, and technology's ready to do it.
Is it really been get on tech or sell? I mean, is that really where we are?
So no, I don't know if it's get on tech or sell. It's get your life in order or sell, right? I mean, run your business like a business.
He's a nice guy.
I'll tell you this though, like the technology piece, to kind of bring this thing full circle, the technology piece is so robust now that my little 100-unit company in California can compete with anybody in the world because I have all the technology available to me that anybody else does. And we can sit down and argue this out, but I can go out and buy the same technology that anybody has. So I'm afforded the opportunity to get data from Key Data, right? In Texas, we took those owner reports and crafted a message to send to each unit owner at the end of the year and showed them their year-over-year revenue, how it related to the goal that we set for them. And I mean, these owners just ate this stuff up. They're like, oh my gosh. I mean, there's data there's technology like Lino's talking about that takes care of my properties. There's the breezeways, there's the key datas, there's my reservation management system with Escapia. All of this stuff combined, if properly used, you can compete with anybody in the industry.
Yeah, technology doesn't help you scale. To your question, it helps you take better care of your guests through platforms like Breezeway and BeHome. It helps you, set your rates better so you can keep your owners happy and take burden off your employees, right? It just helps you run your business better. It's not technology for technology's sake. It's technology to improve how you have your house in order and how hard it is to run your business. Then you can scale. If you're taking better care of your customers, you're gonna grow, right?
So I think that on the tech piece, there is so much of the training piece. I mean, I've been through a software change at a company before. It's hard. If you had to do that, if you were on Property Plus and you told your entire team they have to move to V12, and then they were told again they have to move to Escapia, or they moved to Streamline, and then Streamline tripled their price, and now they're having to move to something else. I mean, that takes a toll on a team. How do you manage the hands-on training and morale and stuff like that when people are having to learn different tech systems?
Well, Amy, it's kind of what we talked about. You run a business, you have a project manager, you have a lead, you have group meetings. I mean, we're in the process of migrating the tracks. We selected them over a couple other companies in the industry. We chose Track because we thought they had the most robust enterprise system for a company like VTrips. And, you get people in, you get login IDs, you make sure people have the access to training, and at the end of the day, you make sure leadership is dialed in. And that's, I mean, if you're going to lead a company, then you should be pretty hands-on with understanding how the software works. And I've been in and out of Tracks numerous times. And, database setup is a critical component that I'm pretty maniacal about. And, it makes a big difference. And I do not expect everyone at our company to be an expert at Tracks as we move forward, but, I expect the managers to be comfortable with it so that it can help train our staff. And then, of course, you have implementation teams that come in. Tracks is going to send implementation teams. And then you also build people internally within your organization that handle implementation and training as well. So you got to run this stuff like a business.
Do you guys have any questions for each other or anything else you wanted to add on this stuff?
Jason, where are you going to spend all your money?
Yeah, spending it on data right now.
Spending it on growing data companies. Yeah, the only question I had for Ben, which I think would be helpful for the PMs left on, is just, I keep hearing that the multiples are kind of jumping from, 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. And in my mind, I break companies down into the, kind of below 5 million EBITDA, which is most everybody, which I think tends to be in that 4 to 5 range still. Maybe north of 5 million EBITDA, which is only a handful of that I know of that have jumped up into those higher, 5, 6, 7, 8 multiples. And then you hear about these 13s and stuff. I mean, you're talking about companies that are doing 10 million in EBITDA that have destinations all over the globe or all over the US that are well run. Like, I would scratch that multiple off your list unless you happen to meet that 10 million plus EBITDA range. How do you see it?
So I would largely agree with what you're saying. I think, we are seeing, surprisingly enough, some companies right now north of 5 million of EBITDA, which is shocking to me. I think, we've talked about timing relative to sell. I mean, look, we're in the vacation rental industry. Everybody's an expert. And M&A experts have come out of the woodwork. They just haven't been doing it for 20 years, like a number of us. But those people that run a quality business will always have the opportunity to sell and sell at a higher multiple. Those folks that are trying to game the system and juice up their business and things like that, frankly, every buyer or every sophisticated buyer out there that's going to pay the multiple that you want is going to be able to see through that. To answer your question, I guess more specifically, we're seeing higher multiples, but then again, we also gravitate towards higher quality businesses. The some of these smaller businesses that don't really have infrastructure and don't have longevity in the average life of the rental management contract, it's not necessarily something we trade in. Now, it doesn't mean we haven't done that. I mean, we'll help folks out on some of that stuff from time to time, but we're focused in on quality businesses, because if I sell your business and 6 months later you're upset because the business got blown up, there was not a cultural fit, that's a problem. That prospective buyer may not come back to me again. And I think that's one thing that we've done a really good job on, is making sure that we sell businesses that kind of remain intact. We talked about Hatteras Realty in that group, Vacation Rentals. Some of these bigger businesses, even some of the smaller ones, have gotten really high multiples because they were quality businesses. And I think that's the big takeaway in the overall discussion.
Yeah, Amy asked me this morning why some of these $2, $3, $4, $5, $6 million EBITDA companies don't just get together and create a $15 million EBITDA company so that the PE guys have something to buy. Because I got a call worth mentioning from a PE company that was going after this prior acquisition, and
Well,
they said, "Go ahead."
I mean, I get a call a week from a PE firm. You know, most PE firms do not want to run a business. And if you have a bunch of affiliated companies and they're not synergized, it is a tough business. And we've known companies that have tried this and have had pretty miserable experiences, because unless you synergize businesses, unless you pull them onto the same technology platform, unless you are able to, gain G&A synergies, you're talking about running multiple silos.
Yeah, it's hard.
And it's very, very, very difficult. So, it's not an easy business. It is complex. I do think that I've talked to some PE firms. The funniest comments are, they always say, well, I know a little bit to be dangerous. And I'm like, no, you are dangerous with the way you're thinking right now.
Yeah.
But go ahead. I mean, if you want to just roll this money and buy up a bunch of companies, good luck.
Well, the question I got asked was, how many companies are out there with EBITDAs north of 10 million that we could roll up? And I said, maybe
a handful.
2 or 3 or 4 in the US.
A handful.
And so the question is, why don't more of these silos get together? And it's hard, but I think you could take the VC in between, right? Like Trigueron did and Bob did, and put some of these great brands together, and perhaps there's a couple of more of those to be pulled off. I don't know. The question is, will the demand?
Don't you think those people, for the most part, they could sell their business at any point in time? I think those are well-run, quality businesses. Do you think that those businesses are going to flip out to a PE group? I mean, are they going to watch this beautiful asset that they've built over years just get demolished? I don't know if they will. My favorite question from these PE guys is if we had $50 million, how many businesses could we buy over the next however long? And I'm like, probably not that many. And they say, well, why? Are there not businesses for sale? I'm like, no, people probably don't want to sell to you because you're gonna destroy the business.
Well, Jason, and the other thing, and I've purchased a handful, businesses and working on a few more, is most of the principals, once they make that decision to sell, typically don't want to stay. And really the conversation is trying to convince them to stay a little longer than they want to try to hold the book of business together and allow a natural transition. But I'd say in general, most principals, once they make that decision, that final decision, I've had enough, or I'm tired, or I want to do something else, they want to get out. They want to cash their check to move on. And, Trigueron, Bay Capital, whatever they're called, that's going to be difficult if they can't retain those existing owners. Now, maybe they've set up some type of incentive program where some of these people, like the Hemstreets and Harris and some of these people that they've rolled up, are going to want to stay engaged with the business. But if not, those principals leave. And unless you have a key employee, and that's the critical component, is who are the key employees, who's underneath, those principals, you've got real risk to the business in terms of retention.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I've learned these lessons the hard way. I mean, it's not like, 4 years ago, I was paying as much attention to this stuff. But, you know, I've got some battle scars now from some of the M&A we've done. I've learned, unlike maybe some of these other companies that are still doing it, how important all of these issues are. You know, the employer retention, the key people, putting them under employment contracts, you know, the branding, all that stuff. I mean, these are thoughtful decisions, and if you can't get them, I've turned away deals. I mean, you know, I've just flat out gotten out of deals where I can't get the principal to be willing to stick around long enough to make sure the book of business is preserved, or they won't let you talk to the key employee prior to the transaction.
Yeah,
and
right.
You're not even sure if the key employee even wants to be employed by VTrips or whoever. I mean, I want people who it's transparent, where the first day I'm not walking in and they find out, oh, guess what? Surprise, you're working for VTrips. That normally is not a good experience. Normally, the best experiences are with the key employees working with the principal under an NDA, and we all getting together, talking about their employment agreement, their bonus structure, you know, kind of, you know, who they're going to report to, what are the benefits, that type of stuff. You know, you want them positive because they've got to sell the rest of the staff on, hey, this is a good opportunity. We're still here. We're not going anywhere.
Steve, I think it's safe to say that you can speak in absolutes on that. That is just not if you're going to keep people in the dark, that's not a good model. And that's kind of goes back to, you know, not being forthright. I mean, we as advisors have walked away from deals because folks didn't want to be forthright in a deal. You know, and it's been awkward, but you know, it's our reputation. We want to be a part of good transactions. And if you've got somebody who doesn't want to share data, you need to find another business.
This is a very, very emotional decision for principals to sell and employees. I mean, we just did a transaction on Thursday, and we walked into a business. We had our whole HR staff there. We had, you know, donuts and cookies, and, you know, the owners came in and gave a speech, and people were crying. I mean, it's.
Am I the only one who's seeing Steve walk in with donuts and cookies?
Well, you know, we tried to give them some sugar, but, you know, I mean, we're signing everyone up. We're telling them they're getting benefits, but still, it's an emotional decision. I mean, this is tough. You've got individuals. These people are what ties the business together. You know, and the key question everybody said is, you know, are you going to fire us? And I'm like, no, we're giving everybody jobs. What happens a month from now? I said, the two principals here they're the managers. If they're happy with you, you have a job. I mean, this company's going to run the way it's been running ever since. The only change is the ownership structure. So look, I mean, a lot of PEs don't understand this. I've talked to them. They think they're smarter than everybody else. You know, that's probably why they're PEs. But, you know, the nuances of this business are tough. And if it was easy, then these companies wouldn't have invested in Stay Alfred, Oyo, Lyric, etc. And, you know, by the way, you know, the companies that prior to Silver Lake invested in Vacasa probably wouldn't put money in Vacasa because they got their haircut too. This is hard stuff. I mean, this is not easy.
I'll never discount the intelligence of the people with the $200 million checks, though.
Never discount the hubris.
It's true.
All right, let's fast forward. Let's say it is March of 2026. It's 5 years from now. And unless I get a PhD in economics, I'm not going to be here. So I don't understand what's going on anymore. But where are we? Where are we as an industry? How much are we completely consolidated? Are there still boutique vacation rental managers, small vacation rental managers? Where are we?
Yeah, 100%. There's still boutique. There's still niche. I mean, you still have that today in the hotel industry, and they're hundreds of years old. So absolutely. I think the market grow. I think the awareness of the segment continues to grow. But I think there will always be, you know, boutique and niche as a really important piece of this industry.
Look, I think if you've centered your business around products that are really not exciting, you've not set yourselves apart from a management standpoint, you're going to get rolled up, or you're going to go out of business. I think this business is very tough. We spend a lot of time communicating with our homeowners. We focus in on revenue. We have, you know, in the markets in which we operate, hands down, have the best people assets, employee assets in the markets in which we operate. Our people are phenomenal, and they run the business as if they own the business. So I think it's a question of, you know, what does your business look like? Is your business going to be sustainable? Because in our 5-year plans, we're showing significant growth. We feel like we're in a position to capitalize on a lot of the infrastructure that we've created.
I think it depends on if you have a commoditized business that sells what everybody else sells at a super low cost, and that's how you're trying to build your business. I think those are in jeopardy of getting rolled up, just like some of the hotels were that didn't have anything unique. But to Lino's point, like, there's always going to be room for people who have special product and special units and deliver better service and take care of people better than the big brand. That's why you've got all these little boutiques and resorts that exist on the hotel side, right? None of that's going away in 6 years for dang sure, in my mind.
There's going to be multiple winners in this industry. So that people that are boutiques, there's going to be money to be made operating a strong boutique business in your region, and you're always going to make a living and probably a little bit more doing that, and you'll never have to sell unless you want to. And then there's going to be winners who, are able to figure out how to consolidate a pretty fragmented and difficult industry. We have an extremely robust and aggressive plan that's for 5 years, just like Ben. And I mean, I think people would be surprised at how aggressive and ambitious it is. But we do think that, we're well positioned because we've been so disciplined about profitability, and because certain things like SPACs are opening up. I would not be surprised if VTrips is in a SPAC in 2022 or 2023. It's a real opportunity for us to gain capital in a efficient capital manner, and that's going to allow us to continue to do the things we enjoy doing, which is growing and consolidating markets.
When you say in one, do you think someone that currently has or is introducing a SPAC, for instance, Carl Shepard, Brian Sharples, would be purchasing a VTrips within that SPAC? Or are you saying that you would be interested in actually playing a part in forming one and purchasing other companies through that?
No, we'll be interviewing SPACs. So
you think Steve Milo is going to report to anybody? Come on, Amy. He's going to be driving the bus on that.
I would like it. We're also willing to interview.
We recognize there's all kinds of SPACs, different shapes and sizes, and we're going to run it like an RFP and really do a lot of due diligence. And but we'll probably work with a handful of people in this industry. It won't just be VTrips that we get along with.
Company? Like a large tech company?
Could be. It won't be GSV, but it could be someone else. And we like to do business with people we enjoy doing business with, and we think SPAC's a good opportunity for everybody to kind of get around some of the PE issues that have previously been one of the barriers to growing.
Speaking of growth, I mean, along those same lines, look, there's no reason to fire sale your business moving forward. If you feel like you're seeing some compression, you're seeing decreased profitability, regardless of what these buyers tell you, there's always an opportunity to sell your business for a reasonable amount of money. If you want to be fair, there's plenty of people out there that want to be they will buy your business. There's no reason to fire sale it. 4 and 5 times multiples, are reasonable for both parties. So don't feel like you've got to fire sale your business just because some buyer told you so.
Yeah, and I'll echo that. We've done deals where we've used 2019 numbers, we've used 2019 EBITDA, we've used 2019 revenue, and then obviously we look at unit count. We can do a deal pretty much any way, right? So, when you're making a decision to sell your company, I wouldn't just talk to one company, particularly if they want you to hold a bunch of paper. We tend to pay all cash with maybe a little bit in escrow to reconcile and true up. Who you decide to sell to is as important as how much money is there. And this is, again, your legacy. So wisely.
All right, you guys, I can't believe it that you all stayed with me this long. I can't believe that 140 people stayed with us this long. But I got a ton answered. I have like 10 articles coming out of this for VRM Intel. for the people who asked questions, I tried to consolidate some of those because they were very similar ones. So I'll go back and make sure that all of those got answered. If not, I'll reach out to you guys to get that. One thing Scott Breon's he's not on the call anymore, but he was piping in a ton of commentary throughout. So I'm like, thanks a lot, brother. I think that his comment about this being the National League, I think that's probably true. The people that we had on the call, I do realize are hugely successful property management companies and property managers, and I think that we do still have a lot of people that don't know that. I'm hoping that we can get back to in-person conferences ASAP, because I do think that these kind of discussions are very difficult to have online.
Well,
and
Amy, funny enough, you're invited to a conference coming up in Sandiston in the middle of May. So we want to have you there.
I will drop it. I haven't even heard this. Except for you've mentioned it to me. What is it? Where is it? Why is it?
VRMA is going to announce it shortly, and I think
today?
you should be running a panel and maybe interviewing some people that weren't able to make it to this panel. I know that there were some people that you probably wanted to have attend, but you only had limited ability for slots here. It would be great to interview those people in person. So
I did have a lot of people reach out saying, why am I not on that panel? That did happen. So
we're going to run a big fundraising event.
I'm so
for the
sorry.
Florida Advocacy Fund, which is, very important. And I hope some of those people that you interview, part of allowing them to interview is for them to actually have their company donate in the Florida PAC, because some of those companies haven't donated a dime to the Florida PAC.
Well, let's call them out.
Well,
so
we have.
Since all of you are in that market, I know whatever it is and whenever it is, we'll get to see each other, and I owe you dinner for this and cocktails. I promise to deliver.
You always have. I love your dinners.
I
They're
know
very generous.
funny.
If that conference goes as planned, we'll have everybody over. I've got a 6-liter bottle of wine that I need help drinking. So
Wow, that
we
looks like fantastic.
Thank you all for listening.
You guys, I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in person, and we'll do this again. Thanks for your time.
All right,
And your
thanks.
insight.
Thanks, guys.
See you
Bye now.
guys.